Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I would like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of November 29th, 2023. The City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open Public Meetings Act. Community members are welcome to join either in person, remote on Zoom, or by calling in. For those who wish to participate in the future on Zoom, you'll find the instructions to register for public comment on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Please note we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. And we also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please call the roll this evening?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Vice President Toohey.
Excused?
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
I think she's running late. She's running late.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here. And I'll ask Councilmember Ryan, would you lead us in the flag salute?
Absolutely. Please stand if you're able.
Thank you. And Councilmember Vogely was going to read the land acknowledgement. Does someone have a copy of it and would be happy to read that? Thank you very much.
This council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stahopes people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they've hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and the water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the November 15th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ryan. Abstain. Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Could you clarify the date on that?
November 15th.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. And good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Good evening, President Stonecipher, and welcome, Councilmember Vogely. I have just a couple comments tonight. First, I'd like to ask for Council's approval to appoint Chief John DeRoos to serve on the Snow 911 Police Agency Caucus as our representative. He's taking over the position that Chief Templeman had and joining Vice President Toohey, who is our other member on the Snow 911 as the Police Caucus representative. So I'm hoping that you will approve that appointment.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the appointment?
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. The county also has a Regional Law and Justice Commission that I had representation from Chief Templeman, so I was curious if Chief DeRoos would be able to fill that position as well.
So I'll have to follow up on that. I guess the county would reach out to us. I'm sure that would be the case, but I have to check.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes.
Thank you. And I wanted to express my deep condolences to the friends and family of the teenager who was killed over this weekend at Senator Henry Jackson Park. Like many others in our neighborhood, I too was awakened at 2:30 in the morning by rounds and rounds of ammunition. It was terrifying, and I know that our community was also terrified by the accounts that they've shared. Upon learning the victim was a teenager, my heart was broken again because sadly this is not the first teenager we've lost recently to gun violence. We're still mourning 2 others from earlier this year. The investigation is ongoing, and I know our police department will share more information when we can. It's part of an alarming trend we're seeing, an increase of gun violence, especially with young people across all up and down the I-5 corridor. So to help address these challenges, I included funds in our proposed budget to increase staffing in our police department. We're also working to staff up our violent crime unit, and the violent crime unit ensures we have the resources to respond to, investigate, and apprehend those responsible for the crimes. Our police department is beginning a partnership with the Federal Bureau of Justice Assistance Training and Technical Assistance Center. They will provide an on-site review of our department's current practices and provide an actionable strategic plan to help us address violent crime. Additionally, Chief DeRoos has been invited by the U.S. Department of Justice to attend a Violent Crime Reduction Summit next month, where he'll have the chance to learn from leading experts and connect with similar-sized jurisdictions to learn about strategies they're using to address gun violence. Another major focus we have, of course, is trying to move upstream to prevent violence in the first place. And we're working on a new violence prevention program in partnership with nonprofit organizations. We did this earlier, like back in 2018, 2019, led from the police department, but we also understand that these programs are much more successful when they're community-led, so we're doing it in partnership with community. And so our officers are working to maintain a strong presence in the community, hosting events like our Casino Road Soccer Camp and attending multiple events throughout the year. We've hosted Guns for Gift Cards events and have gotten hundreds of unwanted weapons out of our community and prevented them from ending up on our streets. And we are looking into education campaigns to try to help ensure that responsible gun owners know how important it is to lock up their guns and not leave them in their cars or somewhere where they can be stolen. And Everett Police and Everett Parks leadership are collaborating to determine the best way to proactively patrol and provide increased safety in our parks. So as a city, we're building relationships with our residents, and we're continuing to rely on all of you to, of course, call 911 when you see suspicious activity, and provide us any feedback on what we can do to help make a safer community. We're very much committed to providing a safe community, the police department and I know everyone on this dais. So I just wanted to again express my condolences, and with that, I have no further comments this evening.
Thank you. And we are now moving on to public comment. Good evening, Angie. Do we have anyone signed up to speak for public comment
Good
period?
evening, President Stonecipher. We do have people in chambers. First, I have a list of names to read for written comments that we received. The following names are in regards to the stadium: Colleen and Wick Temple, Randy Hansen, Catherine Dye, Perry and Rayleigh Grant, Jeremy Olson, Rosita McGinley, Kathy Hope, David Hope, Michael Clemens, Mark Myers, Laura Rezer, Bob and Margaret Bavasi, Glenn McLaughlin, Bill Sukalas, Steve Miller, Catherine, Rick, and Ryan Davis, Kristen Helgeson, Oscar and Anna Lopez, Debbie and Kip Strong, Kyle Dye, Ethan Coffey, Alex Calderon, Charlie Herberg, Dana Tinglestad, Tony and Millie Lewenden, Pete Rasmussen, Kim Baca, Jennifer Kraus, Jeff Olson, Brian Hollingshead, Mike Stevenson, Bobby Mueller, Kinsasha Martin, Matthew Page, Shannon Myers, Tammy Dunn, and then Victoria Mason submitted written comment on Riverfront Development, and Derek Evans on Waits Motel. And sorry, there was two more for Stadium, Anna Maria Beal and Carrie Quas. I provided all these to council, legal, city clerk, and administration to be part of the record.
Thank you.
So for those in chambers that wish to speak, we'll start with Frank. If you could please come to the podium. Frank Dis.
And for those of you who are participating in public comment here in the chambers, there's a timing system on the podium there. So when you start to speak, you'll see the green light, and then there will be a yellow light that will flash when you have 30 seconds left. And when the red light comes on and the buzzer goes, we'll have you wrap up immediately. So
Thank you.
thank you.
And please state your full name and city of residence.
Thank you.
Well, it was suggested that I give a 15-minute review on my feelings, but I see I'm limited to 3 minutes. So I'll get a little help from my watch. Okay. When I was a young lad, maybe 6 or 7 years old, my father introduced me to baseball, taking me to the Seattle the Seattle Rainier ball games, always sitting behind third base. Now I'm starting my 40th season, beginning with the Bavasi family when they brought minor league baseball to Everett, 1984, with the Everett Giants. Over those seasons, I've seen Edgar Martinez, Ken Griffey Jr., both in the Hall of Fame, Randy Johnson, also in the Hall of Fame, and another Hall of Fame inductee, Say Hey, Willie Mays. Like before, I've seen moms and dads bring their children to the ballpark and explaining to them about the game of baseball. Now I've seen the same children growing up bringing their children to the ballpark and explaining the game to them like their parents did, just like my dad did. What a seed baseball and the Everett Aquasox have planted. Well, I see my 3 minutes is about up. And so please let me introduce myself. Again, my name is Frank Diss, Section H, Row 9, Seat 8 and 9. Thank you for your time and interest regarding the Aquasox baseball future. Thank you.
Let's go, Frank.
Thank you. Next, if Sonia could please come to the podium.
I still have time.
And please state your full name and city of residence.
Sonia Bodge, Delta Neighborhood, Everett, Washington. I'm here to support the studies to be seen where you're going to put the stadium. We have 4 season tickets to the Aquasox. We have pretty much since we moved here. And we use them a lot for our personal use, for our business use. We also are business owners here, and I think it would be foolish to let the Aquasox leave. We, go out before the game or after the game. There's people there with kids buying things. It's a money-making enterprise for the city, and I think it would be sad if you let them go. So do anything you can to get this moving forward as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, if Tom could please come to the podium. Oh, Tom Hoven. And please state your full name and city of residence.
Sure, Tom Hoban, Tulalip, Washington. I haven't been in front of this body in a long time. You've aged well, the ones that I know. It's great to see you. I have had a business here in town, the Coast Group of Companies, for 35 years. Was raised to be others-centered. And when you're in the private sector and you're others-centered, you're a job creator, you're all those things. But every once in a while, something comes in front of you and you're compelled to act, very much like you're sort of facing tonight. And in 2003, the majority owner of the Aquasox approached me and my brother and asked if we would be their local partner. Now, owning a baseball team wasn't our business plan, wasn't even something we talked about at home, unless you asked Dad about his great high school career on that same field. We said yes. So we could build a stable experience here for the out-of-town owners and really be a bridge, maybe the local face, to negotiate the extension of the lease with the stadium and create a platform so that someone as fortunate as we are to have in the form of the Volpes could come along and really commit to the team long-term. In our due diligence, though, I sat in a moment in a game in the 7th inning where I know as a baseball guy the next pitch is probably the difference in the game. And what sealed the deal and caused us to say yes to buying into the team was when I looked around, only 20% of the people knew that was an important pitch. This thing, some people are going to talk about baseball, but this is really about community. Affordable, accessible, family-friendly fun. That's really what it's about. I'm proud that we put a group together that brought Jay Buhner into the community, and Jay was a good example of how that, he didn't watch baseball. He was playing wiffle ball with the kids in the bouncy house area in the back. Those are the kind of things that are possible. I encourage you to support our Aquasox. It's one of the institutions that I think becomes kind of a community asset the way airports and hospitals and these sort of things do if you nurture them the proper way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If Tammy would come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence.
Yes. Good evening, my name's Tammy Dunn. I live in Snohomish, Washington, and I work in Everett, Washington. I encourage you, the city council, to move forward and keep the negotiations open and invest the resources necessary to study the options for a new field so we can keep the Aqua Sox baseball team in Everett. The Everett Aqua Sox baseball team has been in the community, I think someone said 1984. I said 1985. That's 38 years, 39 years. Margaret and Bob Avesi bought the Walla Walla Bears baseball team and brought it to Everett Aqua Sox. Here, first they were the Giants, and now they're the Aqua Sox. This baseball team has been a mainstay in the city of Everett and Snohomish County since then. Baseball camps for kids, reading programs, fun, affordable family entertainment, inspire the youth to be healthy and active role models. These phrases represent community involvement. For 38 years, the Everett Aqua Sox have been involved in the community, reading programs with snow aisle libraries to encourage kids to read during the summer. Baseball camps for the kids to learn baseball skills and teamwork. It's more than a baseball game, it's a way of life. Aqua Sox baseball is a fun, affordable family entertainment for the whole family, for friends, and for local businesses. As a season ticket holder, I enjoy attending the 4th of July baseball games to celebrate my birthday, watch a great game with friends, and enjoy the fireworks. Everett Aqua Sox have been woven into our community over the 38 years. The players, the coaches, the staff, they're our family. Everett Aqua Sox employs residents of Everett and Snohomish County. Many high school students gain experience in the work environment by being a staff member throughout the summer. Everett Aqua Sox generate revenue for the city of Everett. And as the executive director of the Snohomish County Sports Commission, we consider the Everett Aqua Sox partners of ours. Having baseball games from April to September gives the Sports Commission team to promote family entertainment to the sports teams who compete in sport tournaments held here in Everett and in Snohomish County. Don't let baseball disappear from this community, a tradition that's been in the community for 38 years. Keep the Aqua Sox here so the legacy of the Everett Aqua Sox baseball may be in this community for years to come. Thank you.
Please refrain from clapping. Thank you.
Next, if Matt would come to the podium, please. And please state your full name and city of residence.
Absolutely. Matt Frazier, South Everett. So you guys saw me last week. I was the one that said some comments about the studies. Let me just reiterate, because we got a different crowd here tonight. No one said anything about the Aqua Sox not being here. So what I did see is I saw a council that moved with intent to be financially responsible to the city and understand what we were doing and making sure that's the right decision. So a couple things on that. Right off the top, where's the MLB? If we're going to talk about money and the MLB's making these changes, where's the MLB? Why aren't they talking about it? Why aren't they kicking money in? That's my concern, okay? But put that all to the side. Main reason I'm here, please pay attention during the animal control ordinance stuff. Make sure that you really understand that. There's a ton of good stuff in there that really will help go a long ways towards not having to have full-size goats, full-size pigs, all sorts of stuff in the city, as well as it doesn't do anything about roosters. So anybody has fans of roosters, it doesn't do anything for roosters. You're fine, you get to keep it. So otherwise, that's all I have to say. I know you guys are going to make a great decision when it comes to the Aqua Sox and the Animal Control Board, and thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Ethan, if you could please come to the podium. Please state your full name and city of residence.
Hi, my name's Ethan Coffey. I'm a resident of Everett, Port Gardner since 2021 and a Snohomish County resident since '98, since I was a child. I work for Major League Baseball, actually, in compliance, so not anything to do with any sort of stadium, anything. So I can't answer questions like he just had. But I am here as a knowledgeable Everett resident. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. To give you an idea of how much time I've spent in pro sports stadiums, I've been to 20 of the 30 major league parks. I've worked in over 20 minor league ballparks. And with that being said, I can confidently say that Funko Field at Everett Memorial Stadium is one of the worst stadiums in the country. That's not an exaggeration. That is just the state that is of what the stadium currently is. Like many here tonight, I have pride in the Aqua Sox as a lifelong fan, and I'm committed to supporting the continued growth of Everett. Everett as a whole will suffer if the Aqua Sox are forced to relocate or if they lose their affiliation and are forced into independent ball. Whether that relocation is somewhere like Bellevue, somewhere close that people could still go to, or Boise, who lost their team in 2021. Voting no tonight will be a dagger in the heart of the future of the Aqua Sox. 43 cities lost their teams in 2021, and 0 of those cities have regained their affiliation since then. So it's only been a couple of years, but it's still not easy once that goes out the door. I'm happy to meet with any of you further to talk about this, talk about my knowledge, talk about my research that I've done on this topic. As for a new stadium, what that would look like, I know last week you guys were talking about other things that could be done with the stadium. MLB now requires that major league teams provide housing for players and coaches and staff. So if you build housing, there's already people that will need to use it by MLB rule. And you could even touch on topics that were touched on last week, like pallet housing and the Waits Motel. Instead of looking at the $1 million cover charge, basically, that we're looking at tonight, I asked you to look at the $12 million of lost economic impact that would come from losing the Aqua Sox. The economic impact study that was performed by CAI a year ago shows that Angel of the Winds Arena brings in many more non-primary use events than Funko Field currently does. And if the Aqua Sox Stadium is used for a larger percentage of those non-baseball events, in combination with their increased amount of games at the high A level, this new venue could generate $43 million in additional revenue annually. Voting yes is a vote for an additional $43 million annually. Voting no is voting for $12 million lost annually. Voting yes tonight keeps the door open to keeping the Aqua Sox in Everett.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Please, no clapping.
Ed, if you could please come to the podium. Ed Glazer? And please state your full name and city of residence.
Evening, Ed Glazer, resident of Everett. I'm not speaking about baseball, I come before you tonight with a heavy heart. For in this season of peace, in this season of joy, in this season of giving, in this season of brotherhood and sisterhood, I have observed the city of Everett police rousting Everett homeless citizens for standing on a city sidewalk, as well as the city-hired mercenaries who roust houseless citizens when they're sitting or lying on benches any time during the night, all night long. No information is given about shelters. No information is given about resources. No room at the inn. No room in a city shelter. All the while, during the day, other citizens can line up in front of Funko, lie on the sidewalk, sit on the sidewalk, while waiting for Funko to open, and nothing happens to them. Why is it that some citizens can sit or lie on the grass at the Everett Farmers Market while others do not have that privilege. Citizens are being marginalized. The Reverend Greg Boyle, S.J., delivered the commencement address at 2023 at Santa Clara University. I want to paraphrase some of the things he said. Everett, go to the margins, and you love the poor and the powerless and the voiceless, and you allow your heart to be altered by them. Everett, and you go to the margins, and you cherish those whose burdens are more than they can bear, and those whose dignity has been denied. Everett, you go to the margins to stand firmly with the demonized and to stand with the disposable, so that the day will come when we, in Everett, will stop throwing people away. Everett, discover that loving is your home. And once you discover that, Everett, you will never be homesick. Thank you.
Chelsea, if you would please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence.
My name is Chelsea Gray. I have lived in the Port Gardner neighborhood for about the last 9 years. I'm here today to talk about the way that the city of Everett deals with victims of violence at home. You know, I'm being stalked, and I can't even get them to take a full report. I'm being stalked by a neighbor, somebody I've never had, you know, anything but known in passing. And they are a Qualcomm employee, and they are using their Qualcomm at-home work setup, which allows them ultimate admin powers and is used to rightfully service client systems. Well, that's been unleashed on me to spy on me in my home, in my bed, in my bathroom, by both microphone and video. It's been recording my phone calls, texts. It even was able to take me off of my carrier, my own T-Mobile carrier, and put me on some carrier that this stalker had made. Now, and I'm not a technical person. I've learned what I know over the past 6 weeks because I couldn't get anyone to investigate. Now, my phones are with a fella who's got a master's in cyber tech, especially civil and government cyber tech. And I've left my phone in his phones in his care. He works for Assurian. And tomorrow I get a full report on what's on those phones. And if you guys understood, if you guys saw this hack done with Qualcomm IP, you just couldn't believe it, okay? There are even things on there that like Bitcoin type things and like podcast type things that sort of point to this person selling the rights to stalk me in my own home to others, darknet style. And this is just what I know. And I just wanted somebody to investigate. And, you know, I left an abusive marriage back in 2011 in Snohomish County, and it was just awful. I just was re-victimized over and over and over again. And you know, I've stayed single while I've lived here trying to avoid things like that because I know how the city of Everett is. And this just happened with a neighbor for no reason. I don't know this person, and I can't stop it. I've been cut off. I had no Thanksgiving. I can't even contact my family. I had a landline installed. I'm on my 3rd router in 6 months and my 10th phone. I'm here to just address the way that you guys interact with victims of this sort of violence, because it is violence.
Chelsea, thank you for coming tonight and sharing that with us. I see Chief of Police in behind you and another police officer, and I'm hoping that they can get some information from you and help you.
I hope so. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for hearing me.
They're right there.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And President Stroser, for the, we have additional public comments, but they wish to wait till we get to items 18 and 19.
Okay, very well, thank you. Would someone like to speak now? You might not. Come on forward, sure. Yep.
Michael Wallace is.
Okay, thank you.
It's basically about the stadium. I was here the time before.
State
but-
your name and.
Oh, sorry,
city
Michael
residence.
Wallace,
Thank
5101 Wilmington, Everett, Washington, 30 years, working and living in Everett. But it's really quick. I just wanted to clarify that what we've heard about is the Aquasox. More importantly, though, and I think that's what I was trying to get to last time, was that could be one of the jewels of Everett. And it's something that as a citizen, constituent, taxpayer, resident, contributing member of Everett, it's something we want and we need. And by saying that, I'm like, it's our stadium that Everett's gonna allow the Aquasox to use. It's our stadium, it's our facility that we'd say, oh, you're wondering about the money. Well, then sell the naming rights or same sponsorships. We have a small business. We've only been going a couple of years. We have banners up at the stadium, and it makes us feel like kind of a big deal. We can't afford that at another stadium, but it works for us now. My point is, a crown jewel or something that we could have for a venue other than Angel of the Winds would be great. I'd love to see an outdoor concert while they're on the road. I'd love to see other events there. And that's the things that you guys need to think outside the box and try to capture, is be like, there's potential besides just baseball. And I know a lot of people will get that feeling that, well, it's just for the Aquasox, and it's not. It's much bigger than that. Just as everybody's already said, the contributions to the community is so huge between youth employment and donations and sponsorships and clinics, and they just continue to give. Let's capture the other parts of it. Let's get some concerts. Let's get some events going and make it something that's a crown jewel that the residents of Everett can be proud of and that we could have as our own. So that's my comment. Thank you, though.
Please, no clapping.
And that's it for now.
Thank you. We will move on now to council comments and liaison reports, starting with Councilmember Ryan.
Great, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. It's always so nice to see full chambers and lots of engaged residents. Before I get started, I'm hearing a lot of Everett residents here, so a friendly reminder that most of our neighborhoods have active neighborhood associations that you are welcome to join and participate in, and I would highly encourage you to do so, check it out. Let's see, since I saw everybody here last, I was able to attend the National League of Cities Conference in Atlanta. I serve on the Human Development Committee, so it was really great to be able to go and participate in that capacity and also see other folks from the Washington delegation there. I really appreciate the city summit conferences just to see how other cities are doing things, and I had a chance to go on 2 mobile tours. The first was called the Egglanta Tour, and was showcasing their urban food farms and to address food insecurity and historic food deserts that were in Atlanta, so that was really exciting. I was surprised to see that they don't currently have Atlanta doesn't currently have a municipal compost or yard waste program, which seems kind of bizarre. It's just such second nature for us, but I'm glad that we do, and it reminded me about the looming summer 2024 ban on styrofoam, and so I would like to ask that we add this to our discussion list for our Parks and Quality of Life Committee to talk about how the city's preparing for this, and maybe a representative from the Department of Ecology could join and give some tips on how we can be best prepared for that. I also attended the Atlanta Beltline Tour, and it was a program that transforms the old rail lines in Atlanta into a really great trail system to provide connectivity and revitalizing areas of the city. And that reminded me of our interurban trail and how great it would be to have one singular entity that's responsible for the upkeep, the safety, and the landscaping of our interurban trail. And that'll be something I'll talk with Jennifer about tomorrow at our legislative check-in, or our check-in on legislative priorities. 2 other takeaways. One, I saw so many murals in the city when I was on the tour, just like sides of houses and buildings and retaining walls and everything. So I was really glad to see the Herald article about the efforts from Bunker Arts Collective to bring murals to Everett, and so I'm absolutely supportive of that and glad to see it happening. And my other takeaway was that for a city of about 500,000 people with a bustling downtown, lots of traffic, street noise was still quieter than Everett. I know the Public Safety Committee had a briefing on the noise ordinance a few months ago, and I know at the time they said it was about 6 months out, but if there's a way to have a different attorney review it so it can come before us quicker, I think that'd be great and good for just the quality of life for here in Everett. Additionally, I attended workshops on trauma-informed policing and enforcement, addressing the root causes of homelessness and addiction, which almost always stems from childhood traumas, combating domestic extremism, and how to support after-school programs to help further municipal priorities. And then I also attended the Human Development Committee meeting. It was a great experience, and I look forward to utilizing what I learned to be a more effective and informed public servant. When I returned, I swooped home, picked up my kiddos, and went straight to the Providence nurse picket line to show my support on their final day of picketing. It's my understanding that contract negotiations reopen tomorrow, and I would urge any vocal proponent of public safety to join me in also vocally supporting our nurses during ongoing negotiations. Providing nurses an adequate work environment so they can sufficiently provide care is public safety. I know the administration at Providence Regional Medical Center here in Everett has been diligent to come to the table for negotiations, but typically they're only able to budge as much as they're allowed. So I'm calling on Providence system leadership to give our nurses here in Everett the guarantees of safe staffing levels so that our nurses can do their job well, and to restore Everett's faith in our most important healthcare facility that we have, and the system, so that knowing that they have the systems in place to provide care that when we are most in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Good evening, everybody. It is nice to see all of you and get all of the emails, and you'll hear a more informed Aquasox comment later. And right now, I think it is literally freezing outside. Faith Family Village had its ribbon cutting 2 months ago. They have room for 8 families, but they have no electricity, so not a single person has been able to benefit from these shelters. Children are fitfully sleeping in their parents' car, if they're lucky enough to have a car. The Snohomish County PUD put in a utility pole on November 20th, but nothing has been done since. And rented heavy equipment is waiting on site to dig trenches, but can't do that until there is power from the utility pole that has been placed. And like I said at the beginning, it is literally freezing outside for at least a couple weeks. I was in California in 80-degree weather, but I was still feeling the chill. So I know I asked for an update last time, and asking again if there's an update or if my update was enough to get things moving. We do have a $665,000 subrecipient agreement with 37 pages of very specific requirements for that site, and I will get into that later. So there's that. And my condolences to the people who loved Big Bobby. I'm sorry for your loss. Not a whole lot of you are probably watching. And I did not know the deceased, but people I care about cared for him. And that was another tragic death due to gun violence in our city. It also was in the Herald. We have the name of the shooter. I met with the leader of Bunker Arts Collective, and I look forward to the possibility of bringing him to a Parks and Quality of Life Committee meeting. That's all about community engagement and murals and painting and wonderfulness. So it was a great meeting. So hopefully we can get something set up for that. I've chosen and begun the process of distributing the COVID response money allotted to me. $75,000 to Leadership Launch, a mentoring program, and $25,000 to Madres de Casino Road. I will share more as I know more, but that is deeply involved in community building. And I was discussing opportunities for community engagement, just community being for young people recently with a friend, and I'm still not certain of all the possibilities. I know that the 2 boys shot and killed in South Everett recently were part of a now defunct mentoring program, which is one reason I want to give to Leadership Launch, because they were going down. And I wonder if this violence could have been prevented if we focused more on preventative measures. I'm not sure the circumstances regarding the most recent shooting death of a young person at Jackson Park, but I can guess that part of it had to do with the lack of feeling of belonging. And I'll also get more into that when we talk about the Aqua Sox as a community investment. I think that's powerful and important. I was hoping to have a discussion about, and it might just get to be too much, or maybe we will get to after this comment, but I was hoping to have a discussion about the animal control ordinance tonight. I was told that the briefing will be moved down the line again. But I do want to give a shout out to Don Cunningham of Code Enforcement. I know that's not animal control, but they work together somewhat. And his response to a severe issue on my street. People are being extremely negatively affected, and Don has at least been responsive, so thank you. If nothing else, I request action on a certain facility license and its possible revocation. Revoke it. I request animal services, police services, and code enforcement services for this issue. I request that the people who put forth documentation about the issue be contacted and at the very least notified of the receipt of said documentation. And I will give names and addresses off the record, but you probably know who they are. Just, and thank you, Ed Glazer, for your comments. I think you've left, I don't know, but thank you. I personally appreciate that. Chelsea, yeah, thank you for President Stonecipher for speaking to her for hearing. And I support our nurses 100% and all the things that Councilmember Ryan said about that. So that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here tonight and talking. Love to hear your passion. And thanks for all the emails too. I appreciate those. I'm just going to ditto the nurses in our community and how important it is to come up with a settlement. So I just plead, they're probably not watching, but I plead to the leadership to come up with a solution for this labor problem. It is so important to our community and to my family and to my neighbors and to my mom. I attended the Silvers-Ducey Women's Pallet Shelter public hearing. It's sponsored by the Volunteers of America and the City of Everett. So I just thought I'd bring up a couple of discussion points that were brought up. There was question whether the project meets the zoning requirements and the intent of the zoning. I think most neighbors, people were concerned, will the project be a good neighbor and a good fit in the community? Parking on Silvers-Ducey Boulevard. There was questions for the ability of the city to build a park if there was ever an expansion from the current park. My specific question, though, is when will the planning department and permit services complete the responses to the written public comments? So I don't know if you have that today, but if you could let me know when the plan is for that. I know there was a couple of them that were very in-depth and had a lot of detail and a lot of research, so I know it will take time to do a proper response. So I just appreciate your efforts of your staff and look forward to the city's response. I also am on the committee called Snohomish County Committee for Improving Transportation. And as we spoke before in this body, there's a process of getting funding, grant funding from the state and federal funding, and we need to get on a list. There are currently 36 transportation projects that affect Snohomish County. 10 of them have gotten state funding. There is a lot of pressure from inflation to reduce or cancel some of the funding or some of the projects. what this committee, we're recommending, and it looks like it's where the state legislature is heading, is really just put off the timelines for the projects instead of changing them or reducing them. Also, there was a state court decision that puts fish passage program as a priority for funding transportation projects. So that also is, it's now been moved up to some of our other priorities, so. Yeah, that's, considering we're short of time, that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
Thanks. I guess I will fourth my colleagues' call to hospital leadership regarding the safe staffing levels. And I was able to also attend the picket, and I just wanted to say thank you to all the community members that brought out hand warmers and gloves and everything. That was a level of kindness and support that I know that nurses appreciated, taking care of the folks that take care of us. So in my community, I know that there has been at least 2 homicides via gun violence this last week. And so one of them across the street from my house and woke my family up with the shooting. So my condolences go out to all the friends and family of those that were lost. And regarding, appreciate everyone coming and the mass amount of feedback and support for the Aqua Sox. And it's been really heartwarming to hear. So I just wanted to say thank you. I know we have more comments coming. Regarding one of the other public speakers, he was mentioning in this cold weather time, and I was wondering if maybe the chief could explain what the process is supposed to be for, for instance, in the cold weather, somebody's sleeping on a park bench in the middle of the night. Do you provide any information, or do you assist them or take them anywhere? What is the current process that we do? Do we have folks that can help, et cetera?
It's pretty straightforward. We have access to the list of cold weather shelters if we come across somebody that could benefit from being inside, and it is cold out there, obviously. We will try to facilitate either a ride or give them directions to where the nearest one is. Not everybody accepts that, but our officers are well aware of the cold weather shelters. We get emails about it, and we brief on it almost every night. If it's going to drop below freezing, our sergeants are advising their crews that these cold weather shelters are available.
And is there updated, information that's provided regarding vacancy or any, restrictions on the different shelters?
I'm not sure if it's available on the fly. The site that we use probably updates whether or not there's availability, but I also know that most of the ones we use will expand and go over capacity if the weather's like it is today, where it's below freezing.
Okay. I would really be interested in kind of knowing what capacity is kind of looking like, if that is a concern for folks. Just my recent experience with some people trying to get some resources for shelter. They were given information on where they can go, but every time we called each place, the capacity was completely full.
Yeah.
And they weren't having up-to-date information so the resource navigator was not providing, that was not their job to actually track that, so there was no place for them to go. Perhaps at the next council meeting, because I don't want to put anyone on the spot, if I could get a little bit of updated information, and also maybe we could publicly announce kind of where some of those locations are, because I think that that's something that is of public interest.
I'll make sure the website gets shared with
Thank you.
Jennifer Gregerson.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, thank you. I'd like to echo the comments of the council members about hoping for a resolution on the contracts with the hospital and nurses and staffing especially. That's a critical issue. Also like to note the recent passing of a neighborhood leader this past summer, Harold Christensen. He was part of the original formation before the Council of Neighborhoods of the Silver Lake Action Committee. This would have been in the late 1980s with several other people. Really going to miss him. He was a neat resident of the neighborhood and a steady force that way, and I'm sorry to see him go. On the subject of neighborhoods, last night I attended the Pinehurst Beverly Park neighborhood meeting. And I guess I'll note, in addition to the neighborhood connections that are fostered by these neighborhood groups, several of these groups have emergency caches of materials and things like generators, plus their CERT members. So they really do add some important resilience in the case of natural disasters, especially local resilience. So those caches are something that people can get to even if roads are disturbed or bridges are down or that sort of thing. So thanks to them for that. These folks have several different things on their plate. That really helps us all. And then lastly, considering the length of the rest of the things we're doing tonight, I just want to note we had the folks from Chick-fil-A come to talk a little bit recently. For those who've been wondering about that, that opening is now scheduled for Thursday, December the 7th, next Thursday. That's the Chick-fil-A at the Everett Mall site. So that'll be a nice opening, another opportunity for dining for us around here, another attractive part of Everett. And I congratulate them for getting past the electrical problems that they were having, electrical supply. I think that's part of what's hanging up the pallet shelter at the Faith Family Village as well. There are still supply chain problems vexing us all. And that's it for me for now.
Thank you. And I have a couple things. First, given the stadium planning agreements that we're going to talk about later on our agenda, over the past several weeks, have been reminded, just kind of reflecting on the process that we used the last time a major stadium project was proposed in Everett. So about 25 years ago, Mayor Ed Hansen at the time had an idea to build what is now the Angel of the Winds Arena. It was a pretty complicated project, similar to what we're looking at here with this baseball field. It required negotiation among several government entities, a private sector hockey team, and at the time there was a fiscal advisory committee was convened. It was comprised of residents. I was one of them. Experts in financing, property development, and other stakeholders. And that committee, I think we met monthly for at least a year. We heard all the consultant reports. We were really in, not in the weeds, but in the mix on everything that was happening related to that project. I believe our committee was advisory to the council and mayor. I think eventually we did end up taking a vote to recommend that the city move forward with one of the project sites, et cetera. But again, that was advisory to the council and mayor. And so, you know, as we go through this process, we've heard from a lot of residents in our community and people in the business community. And I think what has struck me is that I know that my council colleagues and the mayor and all of our residents, we all share the vision of providing a home for the Aqua Sox to be in our community. There's not one person, I appreciate the speaker who noted, there's not one person who is saying, oh, do we really want this team here? That's not where we're at all. I think where we are is, and I can tell from the comments that we're getting from our citizens and residents in our community, that we're just trying to struggle to understand, you know, the process, the timeline, the costs, and in a complicated project like this, I think it would be beneficial for us to consider a similar fiscal advisory committee, get taxpayers who would be paying those taxes if that comes to that, and creating a sort of a commission that would have a work plan in an open, transparent process that has some built-in reporting structures. I think this group could include, again, city residents, business leaders, and representatives from the city, the county, the Aqua Sox, the school district, because I think everybody's got a vested interest in this. And so I would like to work with the city attorney to come up with kind of a plan, and the mayor to come up with a plan for this. And I think because of that, I need a second
I'll second it.
Thank you. So we'll.
Sounds great.
Yeah, so we'll get a meeting on the books and kind of talk about how we could pull this together. Like I said, I think in the past it was a pretty helpful and healthy process, and it created a lot of just moments for people to kind of clue in and get information, for the press to report on things. So I think that could be very helpful for us.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Yes.
Can we also, if that does come about, be notified if there is a consultant that will be joining the group for pay?
Yes, well, I think
Whether it's
in
whatever
the
amount.
past, the consultants, for example, that are on our agenda for later, came to those meetings with that group, and so all of their work was being heard by that group, you know, kind of as the community was hearing it. I think they ended up coming to council meetings too, but a lot of that briefing stuff was happening at those, that fiscal advisory committee first, so, yes.
Thank you.
And then another thing, I would like to work with the city attorney on an ordinance that would preclude a person who holds another paid elected position from serving on the Everett City Council. My thinking on this is, and to be very clear, this is not an ordinance to remove our current council member who serves in the legislature. That is not the intent, but this would apply to future council members who may already serve as an elected official or someone on the council who may want to run. My experience on the council over the past 20 years is that this job is a lot more time-consuming, more complex, and our voters are a lot more demanding of our efforts. And the issues that we have to research and understand is just more complicated and takes a lot more time. We have experienced last session that council member, one of our council members was at the legislature, Councilmember Fossey, and it was manageable because we had other council members who were able to fill in for some meetings and share the workload, and I think that that would be fine. I envision that it could be a problem if we had multiple council members who were serving on other committees and were not able, so we wouldn't be able to kind of help each other out. Further, there are times when elected officials have conflicting demands, and it's difficult to reconcile those sometimes when you serve two groups of voters that might have different opinions about things, and what's good for one group might not be good for the other. And there's also a partisan element. If it is a partisan office, that can trickle into city council, which is really intended and supposed to be a nonpartisan job. There have been several residents over the past year or so that have contacted me about this matter. And for these reasons, I believe the city council and the city residents would be better served if the council members were focused on one elected position. And I want to make clear that for me, it would be like a paid position. I know there are some positions like precinct committee officers that are elected, but not nearly as demanding. So because of our council procedures, of course, I would need another council member who would like to work with me and the city attorney on this ordinance that we could bring back for the full city council to consider.
I'll second that explicitly for the purpose of a deeper exploration of the issues that you raised.
Thank you. And so we will work on that. Councilmember Vogely.
I won't get into all of my disagreements with all of that, but does that also, are you expecting that to count for people who get paid for other people that work in, like for instance, Councilmember Ryan works for representative of the county Dunn. I'm getting all of my words mixed up.
No, that would be, she's not elected to that position. That's a.
But she works very hard. Oh, and then also maybe during all of that, maybe I could just be in on it too, since as a third. You had mentioned that we have so much work to do now, but, and that's different than it was before. And I've heard you mention before that we don't get paid full-time, nor do we get anybody to help us with policy issues if we get a chance to write them and then get a chance to have them put before the body. So might that be a part of this ordinance that you speak of?
The pay has to go to the Salary Review Commission that convenes, so that's not really in our purview. We have no jurisdiction in that area. As far as the policy direction, we do have the council contingency fund that we could use to hire piecemeal policy work if we found that we had policy needs.
That we do. Okay.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
I guess because of the brief discussion of this, I'll add a word or two. Oh, sorry. Because of the brief discussion here, I'll add a word or two. From my own perspective, one of the things I really value and an element of me coming to this position was the city council being a nonpartisan position. It's abundantly clear to me that the issues that come to the council that involve running with the mayor, the city, well, are not partisan issues. And I am kind of concerned about conflicts. I guess I lean towards something that would restrict or prohibit serving on other elected partisan bodies, allowing that for either non-pay or for things that are nonpartisan, other nonpartisan bodies like school boards. I don't want to restrict that. I guess my main concern is that partisan organizations, like a lot of organizations, tend to act in ways that prioritize the needs and authority and power of those organizations. That's kind of what they're built for, and I recognize that, but I am concerned about the tendency for that to come into conflict with the really nonpartisan elements and thrusts of the city council. So that's why I am particularly interested in exploring that with our city attorney and others interested.
Thank you.
You might not have heard that, but it was a silent dog whistle.
Thank you. We will move on to the rest of our agenda. Do we have an administrative update this evening?
We do. I will try to be concise. A couple follow-ups from the last meeting that we had on November 15th. There was a resident who spoke about constitutional rights, some other concerns. I just wanted to let you know that police staff connected with him that night and have connected him with some other relevant staff for his concerns and needs. Also, 2 weeks ago, we had a resident who had some questions about a specific development project. Our staff have corresponded with that person. They've ensured sufficient information is available on their website. There's actually also been a request for a public hearing on that project, so that'll get scheduled and noticed to a wider circle in compliance with our code. And they're also going to continue to review that site where we have information about ongoing land use applications to just continue to try to make it better. Next week, we expect to bring forward an ordinance, an emergency ordinance for temporary use related to the pallet shelters adjacent to Claire's Place for those residents, while the owners of Claire's Place complete the decontamination process. So this is a heads up about that. Councilmember Vogely, your comments and concerns about the Faith Family Village project and the PUD electricity installation. I can relay what Snohomish County PUD have shared, which is that they were waiting for conduit and vaults to be installed. Their work is ready, designed, approved, released for construction, and so they're just waiting for some necessary work to be completed on site by the project's electrician. Now that information is like pre-Thanksgiving, so maybe out of date, but that's the status that we know of the PUD work there. Definitely will follow up with you about your concerns about a specific facility related to the animal control ordinance and facility licensing. Same thing with Councilmember Schwab, your questions about the VOA project. And circling back, I think, to Councilmember Vogely about cold weather shelters. I got like 4 emails about the location. So there are a handful of people in the city who know the locations that are available. And by off chance, if any folks are listening tonight who see someone in need, the Everett Gospel Mission has their cold weather shelter in the city of Everett that opens at 4 p.m. and Everett United Church of Christ is open at 8 p.m. I don't have space sort of availability information, but those are the 2 that are on the list that we have available. The county informs us, that's the site that everyone sent to me. We share that on Facebook, and in addition, community developments distributed flyers. That flyer is laminated in a lot of our parks, so it's out in the community, because we all know the folks in need are not the ones listening tonight. So I think that's all that I have. Thanks.
Thank you, and we'll move to City Attorney. What do you have for us this evening, Mr. Hall?
No report and no executive session.
Thank you. Before motioning the consent items, Councilmember Ryan requested item 12 be moved to action for discussion, and I've agreed to do so. So do I hear a motion for the 11 consent items excluding item number 12?
Councilmember Ryan moves approval of the 11 consent agenda items minus number 12.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Now I'll read we have 5 proposed action items. I'll be reading item 13 and 14 in the record as they are first readings. Item 13 is Council Bill 2310-61. First reading, adopt an ordinance amending ordinance number 3839-21 entitled A Special Improvement Project, Later Phase Eclipse Mill Park Project and Riverfront Trail Improvements Project, Fund 354, Program 073, to accumulate design and construction support services for the amount of $1,113,752. The third and final reading will be on December 13th. And item 14 is also a first reading, Council Bill 2311-62, first reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Loganberry Trail Improvements, Fund 354, Program 091, to accumulate all costs for the project, and the third and final reading for that will also be on December 13th. Do I hear any questions or comments on the 5 proposed action items? Seeing none, we will move on to item 15, the 2024 budget ordinance, third and final reading and public hearing has been postponed to next week. I just want to comment on that as well. So now we come to our.
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
Sorry, the budget ordinance was originally, I think the public hearing was supposed to be tonight, but that is part of this proposed items that is going to be on December 6th. Is that correct?
Salary ordinance or regular budget?
Budget, number 15.
So
Budget.
Okay.
Item 15, yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So question, so
Yes.
item 15, the second reading will be next week?
No, the third reading is next week. I
Third reading,
think she
okay,
was
just
just
wanna
highlighting that it was supposed to be tonight.
Okay, great.
But because of the amount of things on the agenda, I believe it was bumped
Okay,
to next
third
week.
reading, great, that's all.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
Is that correct,
That's
Jennifer?
Council Vice President Tui and Council President Stonecipher came to that decision a couple weeks ago to ensure that everyone was in attendance. So we scheduled the final vote for December 6th, and we kind of went back and forth on whether there's like 4 public hearings or 3, is this the second or the third? Regardless, your vote's scheduled next week. Yeah.
Thank you.
Council President Stonecipher?
Yes.
For proposed action item number 17, which has been delayed to the 20th, I've been hearing some concerns from residents about the type of facility that's being proposed for the riverfront development, and it sounds like there might be a misunderstanding of what might be going in. So if we could have a clarification that it's not just a pickleball court going in. I think there's a misunderstanding of what is being proposed for that space. So it'd be helpful just for the public's understanding. Thanks.
Sounds good. So if anyone is here to speak on the riverfront action item, we are happy to receive comments before taking up action. We could hear your comments tonight, or you could come back in 2 weeks. Is there anyone here to speak about the riverfront project? I don't believe we have anyone signed up, do we, Angie? Okay, we will move on to action items. Item 12, from the consent agenda, authorize the mayor to sign amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with Common Street Consulting LLC. And I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass.
Thank you. A second.
Seconded.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? We have staff here. Yeah, I figured we would. Councilmember Ryan, I'll let you go first.
Great. Did staff have anything they wanted to share first? Or okay, great. Jump right into it. Thank you. So I have a number of questions about the original contract and then also the proposed amendment for tonight. First, I was curious how Common Street was selected for this project and if there was an RFP.
So David and I are both here to answer these questions. Our attorney, Kenan Williams, is the expert in relocation, and he had the referral to Common Street, who has experience in relocation locally and in our state, as well as just up the road in Arlington when they had a relocation. No, there was not an RFP because we wanted to move quickly, and because, any other reason, David?
Well, it's just that we very seldom do RFPs for PSAs of this sort. So this was very much our standard process.
Thanks. I do see a representative from Common Street here, so I would like to hear a little bit more about what comparable work has been done to this project.
So Brendan Perko is here. He's our Common Street senior project person who has some expertise and special ability to work with those that are unsheltered in the state. So, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Brendan Perko, work with Common Street Consulting. I'm blessed and honored to oversee relocation, community outreach and engagement, and also property management services for Common Street. So in summer, we have 2 relocation experts, according to the URA on our team. We have multiple relocation experts, but we have 2 with a combined experience of 55 years. They would be upset if I said that, because that's telling of how long they've been in and how old they are. But in our company as a whole, we have 100 years, over 100 years, but conservatively 100 years of experience with individuals who have worked on exclusively with Uniform Relocation Act relocation. In addition to that, community outreach and engagement. So we have a robust team. As far as the projects, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but maybe some specific questions might be helpful.
Sure, yeah, my question was what comparable projects have been done?
Yeah, so a whole multitude of relocation projects for the state of Washington. I can say Brad Thomas, who is our relocation expert, as well as Dee Ressa, have worked on, they're not here tonight, so I can't tell you a 55-year work experience, but I can tell you that we've done comparable work through the lens of working with individuals experiencing homelessness, which it's similar type of work with community outreach and engagement. We've done, excuse me, over the last 2 years with the city of Fife, we've worked with over 500 individuals surveying and assessing. This has been anywhere from individuals living unsheltered, living in liveaboards, and we've been able to work through the whole city. We've been able to offer resources and services and do survey and assessment on all those individuals and house many of those individuals. So that's one example. Again, I don't know if you want me to continue.
No, that's great, thanks. So if there's already been similar work that's been done, why was the original PSA only $45,000?
David, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, the original PSA was for the sort of preliminary work that they do to develop recommendations. Then the amendment that is before you tonight is for the ongoing work following those recommendations. That is the more detailed outreach and hand-holding and individually tailoring plans for each of the residents there. It's not a separate contract because this is typically how we do PSAs. There's no need to have it be a different contract. It's simply an amendment to expand the scope of work to do the kinds of things that Common Street does at this stage of the process.
Can I also add that, remember, we didn't know about the residents, we didn't know what their circumstances were, and so we needed to do that original work to identify how many people were living there, who they were, and what their needs were. So that was another kind of really important piece.
Thanks. So the August agreement excuse me, lists a senior project manager's hourly rate at $208 an hour, and this contract amendment lists that same position as $283 per hour. What's the justification for the $75 an hour increase?
So we have annual rates, we have standard rates that come out once a year, and so that came out in August, so they were just adjusted rates with our new rates.
The new amendment also lists a principal person at $306 an hour and a project control specialist at $115 an hour. So my question was, why weren't these positions included in the original agreement? But it sounds like just adding to the scope of what was originally there. It also lists an agent working 209 hours in a month at $125 an hour. Is there more than one person in this role?
Yes.
And mileage is also listed at 94 miles for a round trip. Where is this calculated from?
So we have agents, individuals, team members that live everywhere from Centralia all the way up to Monroe. And so it's taking a look at where everybody's coming from, where the subject matter experts are driving in from, and then calculating an average.
And then when folks are driving in, they're also being paid per hour while they're driving?
Correct.
Okay. And then a question for Chief DeRoos. How many calls have we received recently for Waits, for the Waits Motel in situations other than just a standard medical emergency?
I did a little bit of research today. I don't have the same tools that our analysts do, so this is just based on what I could get into the system and look at. And over the last few months, about somewhere between 3 and 5 calls for service a month.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
I'm glad you're here. I looked you up. You have a nice picture on the internet.
Thanks.
And it's good to know that you have worked closely with individuals experiencing homelessness for over a decade. Are you one of the people working as one of the agents prescribed in the hourly rate table?
Yes, I fall in the hourly rate table.
Okay, I'm just not quite sure where to start. So I mentioned earlier to everybody that the Faith Family Village has a 37-page scope of work and PSA and all of that. And this one, I think, is 3 pages. And so when I was going over, like, the invoices for previous work done, there's not a whole lot of information, and I'm not really putting this towards you. I'm putting this towards our PSA agreement language and scope of work, because even with, it's very general. So for Faith Family Village, documentation and record keeping, records to be maintained, the subrecipient shall maintain all records, blah, blah, providing full description of each activity undertaken, records required to determine the eligibility of activities. I mean, there's just a long laundry list of requirements that the city requirements from the people doing the work. And I don't see that level of clarity in this amended PSA. Looks like you have something to say.
And,
so we'll allow it.
because it looks like you're asking me. I can't speak to why the other one is 37 pages, but this amendment is based on our standard template that we've drafted and that we've used over and over and over again. So there's nothing unique about it.
Right. There is nothing unique about it.
But may I
That's a
also
good
add
point.
that the Faith Family Village was a congressional appropriation, so it came with a lot of requirements from HUD.
Oh, yeah.
Or from HUD in order to ensure that we are doing that project
And
above
we're
board.
utilizing the HUD Relocation Act.
We're complying with the substantive
Right.
requirements of the ERA, but we're not utilizing anything that subjects us to HUD compliance and that requires us to use the HUD template.
There was another one. Another thing that I have issue with is, I think, Councilmember Ryan brought it up, the extra people, the upgraded salary, and things that I've seen in there about property management, which doesn't seem like that would be necessary, because, well, that's just interesting to me. So are our homeless specialists going to be providing, you know, shrubbery upkeep, if that's what that is about? And there's so much. I just don't think that this is a well thought out enough piece of work by our policy makers.
I will tell you that it is drafted in a way that allows Common Street to do a very thorough job doing what they do in these types of projects, and that they've done many, many times. And I know from talking with them that they are doing a very detailed job, and a lot of it we won't want to get into details about tonight because it gets into personal information about individuals, because they're working with each and every individual to do a tailored plan. So I guess I'm not quite understanding your
Okay,
question.
so within the plans that have been given, you can sit down. This is, I mean, if you want. I'm not arguing with you.
I don't mind. That's fine. Just in case. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want the personal information of the people that are being helped, but I would like to know if there's itemized reports specifically regarding each and every individual, and when those came about, and like when the occupancy survey was put forward, what that occupancy survey looks like, when Ken and Williams spoke with the people, because having met with some of the folks that live there and are residents and aren't experiencing some of these more devastating times of their life, besides living at a residence that should be not only blight expunged because there is sewage coming up through the showers. The questions, it is their understanding that they've been asked the same questions multiple times by different people in a way that is not reflected in the invoices that have been received.
Well, I think, as I shared with you yesterday when we met, that there's two different processes going on. And Kinnan is really leading the condemnation and the land use and the purchase and sale process. Common Street is working with us to make sure that each of the residents are understood about who they are and what they need. And perhaps when you spoke to them, it was prior to the current team being out there each and every day, because we have been meeting with them for the last 3 weeks.
Since November 8th.
And getting updates. And each week, they share more information about people who are interested in moving out, interested in taking advantage of the services, appreciative of Common Street being there and offering them basic amenities and diapers and blankets. And so I just want to keep those two kind of parallel processes separate, because the work that's being done with most of the individuals are positive and moving forward to find better
And they've been there for
stability.
4 months living with this stuff, and a lot of the work was already done.
A lot of the initial work to understand
already
who they
done.
are, but it didn't go into relationship building and the outreach that now Brennan
Because
and
of the
his
2
team are.
times that Common Street visited.
No, now they've been out there on a
Now
regular
they've been,
basis.
those first
Yeah.
4 months. So,
It takes time.
I know. This whole scenario has been something that I've looked deeply into from the very beginning, and something that we should have been looking into as closely as we are with the stadium. The consultants that we've hired that are moving forward with the stadium have so much information and so much expertise that they are sharing with us. That's not you. I'm just saying. There are policies in place, there are PSAs, there are contracts and agreements that are written really well. And this is not one of them. And that is my problem, and I have many recommendations to make this a better one, but I don't know, you've only got $25,000 left on the initial the initial service agreement. There's so many PSAs, at least 3 of them to my knowledge, as in, yeah. So if we can wait a week and get some, an actual contract that has like emergency authorizations, authorized to relocate a tenant immediately under the following circumstances, authorized to relocate them to a specific list here, not authorized to subcontract services. Oh, that was another one. There's a little clause in there that says Common Street can subcontract with someone else. I thought Common Street was the experts. And so why would they be adding consultatory efforts and being 5% charged more on this? Without, I mean, I do not agree that this is a good contract. And contracts and letting project bids and whatnot is actually a lane that I am designated in on this freeway. So
Brendan might be able to share an example of when a consultant would be needed. From my initial understanding of what's being done is that they will come back to us for each and every unit that's being occupied and share with us a plan of what those individuals will need.
have the people that live there been notified of what their possibilities are? Yet?
They're still building that together.
But there was, in October, in an invoice, it said that it was, a lot of that was preliminarily done. So have the residents preliminary been given some kind of?
Again, I believe today you asked if you could see that document, and I asked if we could make a time for you to be able to review what we were provided. And then also.
And I asked a couple weeks ago, and I know this is getting into argument and back and forth, and I don't want that to be the case.
I want to answer your question, so.
I know, and I want them answered.
Yeah.
Truthfully and in paper. Yeah, so I have issues with the contract. I will not be supporting it. I still want the people relocated.
Councilmember Fosse.
Is there any reason why we can't table it for a week for my colleagues' concerns, for you guys to meet with her and address some of them, and then we just come back to it next week? And then maybe see if there's any suggested changes or anything like that? I mean, is there any urgency for this week?
I assume not. I mean, again, the faster we're able to move forward and not spend our time on the contract and work on the relocation, the people will get housing more quickly.
Would you have time this week to
yes.
convene with them? Okay, just so we can
Oh,
speed
yes,
things
I
along here.
have time for this
Okay,
specifically.
I move to table it for, till next week, and in the meantime, meet with my colleague to address the concerns, and just come back to it.
The only concern I would have, and I think everyone just has the same concern, is that the more time that it's taken, that the more time that folks aren't getting the resources that they need. So we can work up until we hit that initial approval, and we're happy to do that. It's not a money grab. We don't do this work because we look to get rich off this or become famous off this or end homelessness or end individuals that are experiencing extreme trauma. We do it because we care, and that's why we got into this. So that's the only thing I would say. We're happy to do whatever is decided here.
I appreciate your comments.
We have a motion to table on the table.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the motion to table? Councilmember Zerlingo.
Would that tabling take you past the current allocation and stop services?
I would have to look at the remaining budget, and there's work in progress, but I mean, it would it depends on how long this is. We're just talking about a week?
Yeah, just.
I would have to get back. I would have to look and see. I'm
Sure,
sorry.
there will be an invoice coming up. It's the end of the month.
Well, but I'm cautious about this because we're in cold weather and these people are in distress, and I don't want to delay the stuff that we've been intending to do for months.
If we need an emergency, sorry, I'm interrupting.
So, yeah, I guess I am concerned about that. I don't want to run the risk of spoiling something that we're actually engaged in for people who are vulnerable.
I would say that the more time that's taken, the more that we're running that risk. And I would say that any information that we can get to you, any information we provided is more than, I mean, we're happy to provide any information that you would need. So we'll provide that, and we'll let you share it amongst yourselves.
Well, as I understand the issues, it sounds like there's concerns about what has happened to this date, and I think this agreement is bringing us forward into the future, where we need to get these people out of this living arrangement, and so I will not support the motion to table. Any other questions or comments?
Just because I have the information handy, the last invoice that we have was billed through October 31st, and there was a remaining budget of $24,950, but that was at the end of October. So if there's been a push this last month, it would put it close to that cap.
Yes, that'd be correct. And again, I'm reluctant to share an exact number because I don't have it. I could look it up and I could have it to you in 10 minutes, but I'm not able to do that at this time of day. I apologize.
Any other questions or comments on the motion to table? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
No.
President Stonecipher?
No. Motion carries. It will be tabled till next week. Thank you. And that brings us.
Council President Stonecipher, before you get to your action items 18 and 19, we walked through the fact that tonight is a second-ish reading on the budget, and your third and final reading and public hearings next week. But we just really wanted to make sure we have look at them in the corner, finance folks that are here. If council members have questions on the 2024 budget that you want to address tonight, they are here, and now is a great time for that. And so if that is all right, we would just ask that maybe you could
Sure.
ask that.
Any questions on the proposed operating budget? Councilmember Vogely.
Not a question, it's a comment, but it's a nice one. Last week or whenever it was, I asked again, how does this work? And I was able to have a meeting with folks. And I would like to tell the public what I think I finally grasp about how how departments within the city are made. Because I have often asked why and how. And I think I finally understand it. So the general fund, 002, yes, this is in the weeds, but there's all of these awesome departments that we have, like governmental affairs and engagement and community development and all of those. And they all have FTEs, that's full-time, say the E word, equivalents. There's all these people that work there, and their names change every so often, their titles. But they're still paid in that one bucket of general fund 002 money. And so when I say things like, how are we getting a new director of engagement when they don't exist and they're not in the charter? That's within the realm of General Fund 002. Now, if it were over 100 in a fund number, these are for all you weedy people that also don't understand, it's a different scenario. And like the charter says, we shall have Parks Department, we shall have lawyer, stuff like that. So I think that I've finally come to the understanding that, of just how exactly that works. And we do not have necessarily budgetary priority for the different departments under the general fund. That is my comment, and if I have misrepresented somehow, then you could do a better job. Susie, thank you.
Maybe just a small clarification on that one. So as we were discussing the other day, council passes a fund level budget. And the general fund happens to be a large fund that is comprised of a number of departments. And those departments are basically our core services that we're delivering. It's going to be your police, fire, your planning, finance, council, administration, so municipal court, HR, IT, it's those core services. And council is passing the budget at the fund level. And so there is an amount of spending authority that council is providing to deliver those services to the city. And so we're providing a budget plan in the book that we give you in the proposed budget, and that's what we enter the year with. But as you know, delivering services to this community is an evolving thing. And from time to time, changes are needed. Things might need to be moved from one department to another to, if for example, there's ideas for efficiencies to be achieved by combining certain services together. And if that's all within one fund, then, and we're not going to be spending more than the budget authority you've awarded, then we're able to do that. So if that, a little point of clarification.
What she said.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on budget? Okay, Susie, have a good evening.
Thank you.
You too, Heidi. Okay, I have been asked to give a break, so we will take a 5-minute break, and then we will come back and talk about our stadium contracts, and we have a couple other quick parks action items after that. 5 minutes. We will reconvene at 8:11, 8:12. Okay, thank you. We are back from our break, and we are moving on to through our action agenda here. We have come to item 18. Award the RFQ 2023-117 and authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with Environmental Sciences Associates in the amount of $807,421 in substantially the form provided. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion, pass.
Seconded.
Thank you, and we have, good evening, Scott. Scott Patterson.
Just a question, do you want to read both into the record? Because we might be talking about both at the same time.
Okay, I will read the second into the record. Can we do that? Clerk, does that work? Thank you. Item 19, authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with Shills Oblets Johnson, Inc. in the amount of $344,400 in substantially the form provided. I have a motion for that.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, both items are on the table, and now, welcome Scott Patterson.
Thank you. Mayor Franklin, Council President Stonecipher, council members, Scott Patterson administration. Tonight you're going to vote on two contracts. The first contract is with ESA to complete a full SEPA EIS analysis of two potential sites for one of three options. A significant remodel at Funko Field, a tear down and rebuild at the current location, or a new stadium built in the downtown location. The second contract was with SOJ. Their role is to manage all outside work regarding SEPA, EIS analysis, help identify outside funding sources, and negotiate future contracts for design and development. SOJ has already proven to be a great consultant. Through strong negotiations and with the experience to absorb some of the SEPA contract management, they negotiated a reduction of just over $1 million out of the ESA contract. As a reminder, at any point going forward, either or both of these contracts can be terminated. Some of you have been told by a city resident on several occasions that a SEPA EIS process is not required. However, this is incorrect. Both our city attorney, David Hall, and outside legal counsel, Tom Backer, have made it clear that this is the most prudent and appropriate process for the city to follow. Last week, I was asked how we plan to pay for the study, and I referenced 145. Just for clarity, 145 was established for acquisition of real property and can pay for costs associated with property acquisition. The current balance in 145 is just over $4.2 million, 1.5 of which can be used for projects just like this. Since we last met, the people of Everett have made it clear that they want to keep affordable family fun here in our city. By approving both contracts tonight, we keep the door open for this to happen. With me tonight is Ben Franz Knight from SOJ and Chad Volpe, owner of the Everett Aqua Sox. Ben will have a short presentation for you, which we will be happy to answer any final questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Council President, council members, Mayor, it's good to see you again. And it's great to see so many people in council chambers tonight. And if that wasn't making me a little bit nervous, I believe my parents are watching. They got curious what I've been doing going up to Everett on such a regular basis. Absolute pleasure to be here. And I just want to say at the top, I'm really pleased to see the deliberate and careful decision-making that this governance body is doing. This is just the beginning of this journey, and as I go through my slides here, there are multiple additional decision-making points for you all, and so I think ensuring that you're informed, that the decisions are clear, and you know what the costs, what the timelines, what the schedule, what the impacts, what the pros and cons of those decisions are is very critical. And I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. These first few slides are ones that we shared a couple weeks ago. I think you know the history of the Aqua Sox here in Everett quite well, and the reasons that we are looking at either a renovation or a new stadium based on the current conditions of Funko Field. I think you're very familiar with the actions you've taken previously along with Snohomish County in a joint resolution to look at a new ball field here in Everett. And we went over this timeline that brings us to today of activities, including early economic analysis, early looks at a variety of sites. And I would qualify these as all really preliminary work. Just the homework, if you will, to get to this point to say, look, there is a project here that we want to advance in a material way. I want to highlight just one thing that Scott touched on, that an EIS process is recommended for both a new stadium and a stadium renovation, primarily because you're looking at a significant investment of Everett public dollars in property, certainly at Funko Field, that you don't own. And certainly if there was a new stadium, you would be looking to acquire property. So really prudent to engage in a full EIS. We want to align that early with all of the other agency activities. You want to make sure you're following, again, the proper process. And this EIS process really affords you the public opportunity to demonstrate that prudent and thorough decision-making, starting with the environmental impacts for any particular site you may choose. I just want to highlight one thing here on this slide, that the sites can be amended, added, or refined over the course of the EIS process. Those of you who have been studying and watching the sound transit process and site selection, that has been longer than we certainly hope to have for this, but that's an example of an EIS process that evolves over time based on identification of a new site that may be better than the ones that we start with. But we feel confident that the ones that are included in this study at the beginning are representative of the best options for you as a city: existing Funko Field and a downtown site. I think you're familiar now with the recommendation to go with Environmental Science Associates, or ESA, for this EIS study. We received a number of questions about the funding sources for this. And again, we're early in this project process, and so we have a very wide range, $40 to $80 million, and a number of different sources, including the Aquasox, either direct capital and or related revenue over the term of a lease, and that could be in the range of $5 to $10 million. We've talked a fair bit about the state funding. That's a $7 million grant from the state that would come into play as a project moves forward. Other grants and public funding in the range of 23 to 53 million, and those are City of Everett funds primarily for the host of different sources you may use that you have at your disposal, whether it's additional revenue sources, existing bonding capacity that you have as a city, and we'll analyze all of those and bring those forward to you to make an informed decision as we refine what is the total project cost and what is this project. Is it a renovated stadium or is it a new stadium? And then a bucket of other funding here, and that's not meant to be vague, but that could be federal funding, that could be additional private partners that come into play depending on the uses and mix of uses that you have in a renovated or new stadium. I want to comment just lastly on the range here. This is a wide range, and that's what we know today. This could be a renovated stadium, and this could be a new stadium. It could involve limited property acquisitions. It could involve more extensive property acquisitions. You could have an appetite for a bare bones stadium, or you could look for a stadium that has a whole host of additional things and actual additional components to the program. And that's why today, this is the best we can provide in a range. Again, we will continue to do our due diligence as we go forward. And as you reach every additional decision-making point, you'll have greater refinement and greater certainty around both the sources, the cost, and the ultimate schedule. I want to talk about that for just a moment, and I want to acknowledge a young reporter, Ashley, with the Herald, who actually did a pretty good job of capturing the flow of decision-making here. We're in the very beginning of phase 1, and that's evaluating the sites, conducting that environmental impact analysis, ultimately making a site selection, and then confirming the funding and site assembly to make that site possible. So that's really in phase 1. In phase 2, you're actually doing that site acquisition. You're negotiating all the contracts with designers, developers, and contractors. You're negotiating with all your public and private partners to formalize those agreements the funding, the timing of that funding, the amounts of that funding, and the terms that come with it. You're designing the stadium, and then ultimately you're starting construction. We anticipate that phase 2 taking place in 2024 and 2025. I just want to pause here and note that basically every bullet on this slide represents a decision-making point for this council. We'll be coming back with either contracts, a recommendation for site. So this starts to give you a sense of the flow of decision-making long before you ultimately get to say, okay, this is the total project budget, this is the project we're going to build, this is the location we're going to build it, and then you go. So I just wanted to pause there and say there's multiple decision points ahead of us as we go forward. The last thing I want to touch on is just immediate next steps. We want to start this EIS. We want to start it as soon as we can. We want to move forward with it in a timely fashion, again, to meet targets and goals that are set by MLB and that we need to meet for the AquaSox. We want to continue our cost and funding due diligence, and there's a fair bit of work to do on that side. To ensure there's adequate reporting and appropriate and regular reporting to the council, you'll be given monthly updates via your council digest, and then briefings every 2 months, beginning in February. So you may see me, you may see Julie, who you saw a couple weeks ago. Scott will certainly be here. I don't know if Chad's going to travel for every single bi-monthly briefing, but certainly great to see you, and you're welcome to join. But I just wanted to outline those immediate next steps, and happy to take any questions.
Can I just add to that, since President Stonecipher will be working with us on, what did you call it?
Fiscal advisory.
Fiscal advisory, that might add additional updates that may or may not include any number of the folks that are here today, but that would probably be even more frequent than what's listed here, so thank you.
Questions or comments? Councilmember Ryan.
Great. Did you have more presentation?
Nope.
Great. Your parents would be very proud of you. I just want to start with that. Thank you. So similar to my question about the Common Street contract, why was the original PSA with SOJ, unintentional rhyming, only $50,000 instead of the full $344,000?
Because there was a desire to get my understanding is there was a desire to get this rolling, and $50,000 is the limit at which the mayor can authorize it, and now there's more work to be done, and so it's over by our procurement policy over $50,000, and the firm selected not through competitive bidding under our procurement policy over $50,000 comes to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Council President Stonecipher, for suggesting the Fiscal Advisory Committee. I'd be curious if there's a current existing committee that does a similar type of review that this could be added, so then we don't have to recreate a wheel of some sort.
I'll just say, I'll let Scott speak to this too, because he's taken over this project, but since I started this work before we hired Scott, about 1.5 years ago, we formed a kind of a baseball advisory committee as soon as we found out what these standards for Major League. I worked with my team to call together a few baseball enthusiasts as well as people with financial expertise and community leaders, and I think previous owners were invited to start having conversations. Tammy from the Sports Commission, I believe, was invited to be a part of it. And yeah, so we had a few initial conversations. That would be a good starting group that I could share with President Stonecipher and see if at least some of those folks meet the criteria that you're looking for, but I certainly open to adding additional. We did have a fiscal advisory committee. That was like, gosh, 4 years ago, maybe. I don't know if those volunteers would want to serve in this capacity. We'd really have to reopen that and approach them. I don't know if they're passionate about this, but we do have a good depth of volunteers that we could go to.
Great. Yeah, I was just putting it out there as a suggestion. Another suggestion that I've made recently, and I'm going to reiterate it again, the Kansas City Royals has, their local minor league team has a urban youth academy, and the major league team, it's my understanding, helps put in money to the minor league stadium and system because they have, or through the major league's charity arm, they provide money to the minor league stadium and team. That's my loose understanding. I don't have time to look into it, to be honest, but I really would love for folks to look into it. I've mentioned it at least 3 or 4 times, so I'm saying it from the dais. It's called the Kansas City Royals Urban Youth Academy. It's a really great program to help young people, divert them from activities in after-school hours that probably wouldn't be positive for the local community. So I would really urge folks to look into that as a possibility for both funding and also for community supports.
And I think those are the kinds of things that a fiscal advisory committee would take up and say, okay, here's a possible funding source, let's check it out.
Great.
Yeah, we work with the Mariners and MLB already on play ball weekend for getting youth involved for both baseball and softball. The president of our company is on the Youth Baseball and Softball Advisory Committee for all of Major League Baseball. So we're sort of actively pushing to expand that, particularly involvement with major league teams with their minor league teams and hopefully diverting some funding to that. So you're exactly right. Those are all good things. We're trying to get that rolling because we've got a great venue and know how to sort of manage those events. And for major league teams to help provide some of that funding to help those events happen in communities is a win-win for everyone. So you're exactly spot on of some of the things that are in progress are being done and hopefully a lot more.
Great, thank you. And thanks, Scott, for getting all the answers to questions that were asked by council a couple weeks ago to get more certainty on moving forward. I'm glad to support an Everett institution, and I'm willing to take a minor step to support our minor league team to see that they stay the Everett Aqua Sox. And from recent events that I've been to in downtown, Everett residents are obviously very hungry for events like Salty Sea Days and downtown trick-or-treating, Disney on Ice, and baseball games. And so I'd love to see this continue as well and appreciate the diligence of everybody to answer questions and just help paint a clearer picture for us. Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, thank you for assembling all the data and all the correspondence in one location. That was very helpful for our staff. One of the questions, I guess, just a couple of discussion points about the EIS and whether it's required or not. Could you talk a little bit about potential liability if we don't have an EIS and a full one, like for both sites, and when it considers to open bid and using public funds?
I probably am the one to address that.
Oh, okay.
Because Funko Field is not owned by the city, if this were just a remodel of Funko Field by the school district without any outside money, without any purpose other than high school baseball, they could make a decision whether or not to do an EIS. But because this is a project that we are very much involved in, SEPA requires, and the case law is very clear on this, that the environmental review process look at a range of reasonable alternatives. So it cannot just look at that one site, it has to look at other reasonable alternatives, and I think we're talking about maybe 3 here, including what's called the no action alternative, what are the impacts of doing nothing. And for a project this size, once you look at a range of reasonable alternatives, you're just talking about an EIS. There's really no getting around it. And the liability is not a financial liability. The liability is somebody who wants to slow the project down can easily slow it down by bringing a lawsuit saying you should have done an EIS and you didn't.
Yeah, thank you. And then for another discussion point, could you briefly talk about some of the communication we've had with the city and the school district about the project and some of the studies that we've done?
Yeah, I think both Chad and I can talk to that. I personally have had multiple conversations with staff at the Everett School District. I met with them on one occasion. We had another meeting, unfortunately rescheduled for tomorrow. And we will plan on meeting with the school district probably once a month going forward with this process. Chad can speak to the meetings and all the involvement he's had with the district with regard to his development of this project.
It's funny, we're the only professional sports team in the country, baseball, hockey, basketball, that has a school district as its landlord, which has actually been a great thing. It's been a really good partnership with them. They've been great since we've owned the team and since the beginning, and they continue to be. as you've all heard, is we've gone to a longer season. Instead of starting in mid-June, when high school's done, we're now starting in April, so we're overlapping our seasons. And our general manager, Danny, I don't envy his job of getting in the room with the school district and plotting out how do you map a bunch of high school baseball games, high school practices, Aqua Sox games, Aqua Sox practices, everything else that goes on there. But it's been a great partnership and sort of making that dance work. No one emerges from that totally happy. Both sides have a give and take, but that's any good partnership what you have. And so as we went down this path of, as Major League Baseball did the restructuring, and we realized we're going to need to bring the facilities up to compliance of what does that mean? And there are a lot of unknowns and question marks. And as our landlord, we've been in constant contact with the school district, both on the big picture things revolving around that, as well as the nitty gritty. How do we survive another season? How do we get through the next season? Who's going to start at 11 a.m. versus 4 p.m.? We start Friday games at 11 a.m., 12 p.m., so the high school can play later in the day. And so there's a give and take from everyone. And so we have, because the school district is a little bit restricted in what they can spend money on, as far as doing anything with the stadium and the facility to bring in anything more than high school compliance, or high school standards, I should say. I don't know what the legal term is, but effectively that's what it is. So we commissioned the Popular study to look at the site survey analysis, which looked at 7 or 8 sites throughout Everett, narrowed it down to effectively 2 that were made the most sense. Funco Field being one of those 2. And so that was something we paid for. We are commissioning, hopefully in the next few days, for lack of a better term, a feasibility study to look at Funco Field, what renovations would be needed, what would you do, what could you do, renderings on that, and a cost analysis. We're paying for that study all on our own dollar, but obviously the school district we've been keeping involved, and they'll sort of be the third party at the table, even though it's a study that we're commissioning. So we've been working with them hand in hand to see both on the operational day-to-day side, how does this work? And we've made it work the last 3 years with the expanded schedule, as painful as it's been. And then we continue to be in discussions with them on what could, et cetera, solution be that would work for the next 30 or 40 years, and what does that cost? And that, as of right now, is sort of the work product that we're commissioning.
So you've had discussions with their staff on the Populous study and some of the improvements and the sites and that sort of thing?
Yeah, the Populous study really just identified, of all the sites we sort of looked at in Everett, again, of which there were 7 or 8, I don't have it in front of me, it looked at infrastructure, sewer, electricity, ingress, egress, parking, all sorts of things, and really narrowed it down to sort of what sites don't make any sense, what sites are a real stretch versus what sites make more sense. And Funco Field was one of the ones that emerged at the top 2 or 3. And so, yeah, the school district obviously knew that we had commissioned that's what the results were. Downtown had pros and cons. Funco Field site had pros and cons. And then sort of the next step of that, which we've told the school district about and have been talking to them about, and they'll be involved in sort of the kickoff meeting, is this feasibility study of Funco Field, of what could you do, what do you need to do, new buildings, moving buildings, renovating buildings, and what the costs associated that would be.
And Councilmember Schwab, I'd just like to add, I meet quite often with Superintendent Saltzman. We talk about baseball pretty much every meeting. He's a huge baseball enthusiast and supporter of the Aqua Sox, supporter of the Mariners, has vocalized his support for keeping the Aqua Sox in Everett, working to keep the Aqua Sox at Funco Field is their goal too. If it works out for everybody, they would love to keep the Aqua Sox. If it doesn't, they also just support keeping them in Everett. And so those are the conversations I've had with the superintendent, but most of the work is staff to staff.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councilmember Zerlingo.
Well, I will shorten my comments by avoiding repeating things that I don't have to. But I first would like to thank all the people who wrote and spoke. In particular, a range from their own personal experience, what it meant in their life, to more comprehensive analysis of what all this could be, either at Funko Field or other sites. Although one thing I think is not yet as clear in my mind as I'd like, but we will get down the road a little bit, is the kinds of additional uses and more extensive use that might happen if this is not at Funko Field, if it's at the more downtown location. Obviously, that gives more opportunities that way. There was, obviously, as people have commented on, lots of discussion at the last meeting. A lot of us with a lot more evaluation of many megabytes of written materials and graphs and things since. And I know it hasn't been the most orderly thing, but I really value the range of opinions and questions that have come up from everybody here. Some of those things were things I hadn't thought of. And I especially value that at this point now, because as uncomfortable or difficult as this situation is, I can see that we are far better off if we ask these kinds of questions, have these kinds of discussions now, rather than being down the road 2, 3, 4, or 5 years and wish we'd have had those. And for large projects like this, I think there should always be a ton of questions up front, including some that are really skeptical and maybe even a bit cynical about costs, schedules, risks, who pays, how these funds are shared, what's really equitable in this case. Because I know there are communities around the country who have gone forward with stadiums in recent years, some of which have lost their teams and have vacant stadiums now, or they have things that just aren't paying in any practical way. So that's, I think, why we have been so energetic about this, and I did want to recognize that. But also, there are other factors in here that I guess they're part of the background of me trying to make a choice here, and I feel like I want to share the basics of those. One of them is, as has been described in several different ways, we in a city with these sports organizations are in a kind of a constrained bargaining position. And I think that's what causes us to want to evaluate this moment by moment, month by month, week by week. I'm especially interested in the idea of a feasibility force. I'm thinking back to the mayor's fiscal sustainability committee from a few years ago. Reading that report, I realized we've got business people and community leaders who are willing to step forward and do what I could see from that report was incredibly hard work, especially from the standpoint of them trying to find paths forward and finding that there were, if I remember, about 24 different elements that they called out, analyzed for timing, cost, probability, and then noted that you would have to do a set of those if you were going to solve it that way. So I think that's what we're going to need here, so that we, of this money that we allocate, that we spend as well as possible, as carefully as possible, that we come to these decisions as quickly and clearly as possible. And also, I think it's important we establish a really thorough and a public history of the analysis of these sites and the options. Part of that is because this is Everett. This is a manufacturing and industrial city. So the ground under our city here has a long history of commercial and industrial uses. So maybe less at the Funko Field site, the former Elks site, maybe more at the downtown site. We're going to want to be careful to look forward at those things. We can't afford surprises that we could avoid. So we'll want to look really carefully there. And for the sites that we might need to, we're likely to need to acquire some property and maybe quite a bit of property. There'll be different ways to do that. And as I think our city attorney said, having shown that we've done the comprehensive studies there is going to be really important. And from my own experience in the private sector and large projects, expenses that seem significant at the beginning seem to always pale at the end of the project if you do it right. Things that you discover there have the highest leverage now. We have the best chance of making the right choices. I let's see, I think I mentioned the last thing about other cities and their experiences, that some of them are positive examples. Some cities have truly been revitalized by this kind of thing, but some have been impaired. And of course, there are balances that are really complicated, as President Stonecipher had mentioned before. If we choose a downtown site, we're taking some of that property that is near the terminus of the Everett Link extension of Sound Transit, so something that otherwise might be mixed use, that might be transit-oriented development, that might be other uses there that would be also highest and best, certainly way different than it is there now. That's something we'd want to weigh here and be doing in the months to come before that decision, because the decision will come before we have all the rest of the data. Let's see. I'm keeping it as short as I can, I assure you. And I guess for my own sense of this, and I want to hear it if anybody feels differently, it feels like we are looking between two different options. One of them is lower risk, lower cost at Funko Field, more difficulties in terms of working with the landlord there and their uses of the field. But again, lower risk and lower cost. We're looking at another one that could be much higher public benefit, but also likely to be higher cost because of land acquisition, higher risk because we don't know what's under that dirt. Probably somewhat of a more risk in terms of timing. We don't know what all that will take in terms of tear down, remediation, and that sort of thing. There have obviously been some surprises that way that are negative. And I think that's it. I wanted to summarize the way I'm thinking about the concerns I have. I'm also gratified that we have a team that is not at this early stage playing us off against other cities in the region or other states even. I think that is an opportunity for us. We want to come to a clear conclusion on this as quickly as possible. Thank you.
I think we'll take our public comments now. Angie, do we have people signed up to speak here before?
Yes, if Stephen would like to come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Sounds good, thank you. I'm Stephen McGinley. I live in Everett, Washington. I'm in District 3. I'm here with my mother-in-law, Wilma, who is in Ms. Fosse's district. Similar to some of the sentiments that you guys have already heard, I'm a father of a 2- and 4-year-old, and trying to find something affordable in this world to do with them is so hard. The Aquasox give us that opportunity so much. And we're losing those opportunities left and right, especially after COVID, with things that are being taken away from people who have young kids. Losing the Aquasox would be so detrimental to that. I'm also really, really happy, and it strikes me a lot to see the different generations within this room as well, too. If I could have my kids here, believe you me, I would, but the baseball, community, and it's not just the baseball community, it's this community, has so much diversity, and it's awesome to see, especially on a night like this where something so important is going to be voted on. I really appreciate your comments, Councilman Zarlingo. Making sure that we do this the right way is super important. This is public money. I understand it's a ton of money, but we also want to keep an asset like this in Everett. I've talked to so many people who have come from different cities to our city to watch the Aquasox at a high school field. Like, spend money. It kind of blows your mind, but they do it because this is a cool place to come to. The Aquasox provides such a good product at such a good price that we do get that. I think I'd be remiss too not to mention some of the successes that I see in the city with the arena. I've been to Disney on Ice, which I think you mentioned. I've been to Paw Patrol. I've been to a lot of the different events that we have down there. And if you don't think that those events get packed and there aren't similar ones that can be done at a brand new stadium or a remodeled Funko stadium that would be family oriented or just more community oriented beyond sports, they do exist. We've been to Hartford. We were at a AA stadium that's fairly new. The events that they do, it's so creative. It kind of blew my mind that the ways that they're able to make money and bring stuff in beyond the anchor tenant of whatever sports team is there. I really, really urge all of you to vote for this. Let's keep the process moving. Let's keep the Aqua Sox in Everett. I really appreciate the time, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, if Scott could please come to the podium. Please state your full name and city of residence. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, thank you. Scott Murphy, Everett resident for the past 30 years, District 1. And as you know, former city council member for 9 years, and for the past 5 years, board member at Angel of the Winds Arena. Stephen, glad to hear you're enjoying everything we're doing at the event center. I really want to thank you, council members, for your diligence on this over the last few weeks. And I also want to thank you for your commitment to taking the necessary steps to meet the requirements to assure that the future of the Aqua Sox in our city is secure. Aqua Sox baseball has been an important part of our community for 40 years, as has been talked about, and we all appreciate that. When I came a couple of weeks ago, I expressed 3 basic messages. First, I expressed then also my strong support for Aqua Sox baseball. Second, I expressed my frustration with what appeared to be a lack of sharing of information from the administration over the last year and a half with you, the council. And third, expressed that I was really surprised that you were all being asked to approve $1.1 million in consulting fees without even being given the courtesy of the information that we finally received tonight, which is the $23 to $53 million that the city is being forecasted to have to spend. So you're to be commended for asking these questions. It is an important project. We need this project to happen, but we can't, to your point, Councilman Zarlingo, we can't wait 2 years and go down the road spending consulting dollars and then find out later that the costs are unsustainable or can't be afforded. So as I tried to mention a couple weeks ago, this project is an all-hands-on-deck project, I think, at this point. And I really appreciated Council President Stone-Cipher, your suggestion on the Fiscal Advisory Committee. I remember in the early 2000s when that committee was formed and the Angel of the Winds Arena became a very successful venue over the years, in part because of the good planning that was put in up front. It's unfortunate that we are where we are now at this point. It sounds like, according to Scott, that if this action doesn't get taken tonight, we're at risk of losing the Aqua Sox. So I feel bad that we're now at the 11th hour. But it's important that we move forward, and I just want to commend you all for taking the extra time to ask these hard questions. It's important that we get it right. In the end, we end up with a successful ballpark at the end of this. So well done, and all hands on deck. Thank you.
President Stone-Cipher, that concludes all our public comments.
Thank you. Any final council comments? So I'll just add a few, oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember
I guess it's time to
Oakley.
CYA. Thank you. I am encouraged and thankful for all of your comments, and what got me the most, and you heard me talk about it earlier tonight, is community. And I have received many emails about just how well, and just you talk about how absolutely delightful the community building is. And if we had more of that and different scenarios of that as we go forward in this city, hopefully we will grow in a loving manner and have less gunshot wounds. You know, it's all interconnected, and I see it all that way, and that there is a place for so many families, you know, biological or not, to get together for nicely priced enjoyment of fun and community, then that makes me want to say yes, and so I'm going to. And, you know, as somebody also mentioned, like, well, what about, you know, when we had to let go of the the animal farm at Silver Lake, that is a really great opportunity for family fun as well. And this was years ago because our budget is ridiculous. I hear that comment, and that was also a horrible decision to have to make. And I feel like for a new stadium with various amenities possibly provided and such support by the owners and such good documentation by the consultants and all of you that want it, then yay. That's all.
And then I just wanted to, Scott, I'll ask you, I understand now that we are not trying to use the funding that has been allocated by the state. We're going with our internal funds where we have a fund balance that could pay for this.
That is correct. I mean, at some point in time, we're going to be a player in this. So whether we commit 1.1 million or 3 or 4 million to the project as it goes forward, we are going to commit some funds. So we're looking at this commitment as our initial commitment to keeping the Aqua Sox in Everett.
Okay. And, I think one of the reasons the Fiscal Advisory Committee, and we'll talk about that again at a future meeting, but one of the reasons that works is that, we have a lot of players in this game. As you look at this pie chart that we see for the funding opportunities, we're not the only government agency that's going to be playing in this ring and helping to fund this project if it comes together. And I think it's important for us to remember that we all serve the same taxpayers. And so whether, we get money from this agency or that, I mean, the state is a little different, but ultimately these are all taxpayer funds that we're talking about. And I think getting everybody who is part of that team into a meeting on a regular basis to talk about that and remind ourselves that we're really trying to all solve a problem, but working together on behalf of the taxpayers. I think that will make the most sense to me. And I really appreciate everyone's comments about, this pause that we took on this. I know it caused some people to get, nervous out in our community that somehow we weren't supporting the Aqua Sox, which, as I said earlier, is not really the case at all. But really trying to make sure that we're making good decisions on behalf of those taxpayers and understanding what we're being asked to commence on. And I appreciate the presentation tonight. There's a lot more information that helped me understand the other pieces of the work that needs to happen, including the economic and just the feasibility of the existing site or the chosen site. So I appreciate that. I'll support these contracts so that we can get moving on this. Councilmember Zerlingo.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but when we're talking about millions of dollars, I guess fine points are important. But if I understand this correctly, instead of funding this with, as was assumed a while back, I think with some of the state, $7 million or so state funding that was allocated for this capital improvement, that we fund this from our existing funds, but that does free up that same amount of those funds that we would have otherwise spent. So it's fungible, I guess, is the financial term. So we aren't losing anything by funding this from the city that way that we would otherwise get.
That's correct. The 7.4 million from the state will still be committed to the project.
And then I guess the last point was, I think you and I have talked a bit about this, that confidence that the county will be our partner in this going forward as they have been so far.
Yeah, Mayor Franklin, Dan Ernst and myself have all had multiple conversations with the county, and they have committed to being a participant. We haven't had a budget. We don't know what we're asking to build, so it's really hard to ask them for a dollar amount. As I stated to you earlier, I would sure hate to ask them for $2 or $3 million for a remodel when it turns out a remodel is not feasible and maybe we need 10 million. So, showing your cards when they're dealt isn't the best way to play poker.
Yeah, I appreciate the frankness. Thank you.
And just, I want to add, the county has been engaged with us from this since day one, not only the joint resolution that you passed together with county council, but also a year ago when we toured the stadiums on the East Coast, We had county staff and county executive director and county staff, as well as Sonoma County Sports Commission, and so they've been a full partner all along and are very supportive of this project. But exactly the financial level of support is yet to be determined.
Well, an intern for Councilmember Schwab last year looked at some of the other cities, and, it's clear that if it's done right, this really can be the kind of thing that's a big benefit for a community and is sustainable by the community, financially support-wise. And if you don't, it looks just like the opposite of that. So I certainly want to be on the favorable side of that, and I'm encouraged by a fiscal committee to keep a close eye on this.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to vote on item 18 first. I'll read it again. There is a motion and a second on the table, but this is the RFQ 2023117. It is the agreement, professional services agreement with Environmental Sciences Associates in the amount of $807,421. So that is the item that's up for vote. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Now we'll take up item 19. This is the professional services agreement with Shills Oblitz Johnson Incorporated in the amount of $344,400. And we have a motion and a second on the table. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Thank you all for being here. We have a couple of items left on our agenda. We will. No, thank you. We are moving on to item 20, Council Bill 2310-57. Please keep the order. Third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance closing a special improvement project entitled Hannahbrook Park Improvement Project, Fund 354, Program 85, as established by ordinance number 3931-23. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Ryan so moves.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. Item 21, Council Bill 2310-58, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance closing a special improvement project entitled T.A. Sullivan Caretaker House Demolition, Fund 354, Program 082, as established by ordinance number 3932-23. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Ryan so moves.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. And now we come to our briefing item. Item 22, Council Bill 2312-60, first reading. Adopt an ordinance establishing the basic salary schedule for employees of the City of Everett for 2024, repealing ordinance 3926-22. Third and final reading of this item will be on December 13th. And Candy, you must have done something bad because you got the short straw and had to stay all night. Thank you for being here this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So tonight, we are asking that council adopt an ordinance establishing the 2024 wages for city employees. The wages for the represented employees have already been approved through the collective bargaining process, and we have no outstanding contracts this year. All wages that are contained within the ordinance are also included in the proposed 2024 budget that you've been briefed on by Susie and Heidi. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have tonight.
Any questions? Okay,
Nope.
thank you. I have no questions. Do we have any questions from anyone in our community?
No, we do not.
All right. Well, with no questions, we will see you back on this item on the 13th. And thank you for hanging out with us and giving us this briefing.
Absolutely. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.
You too. And with no further business or executive session, we are adjourned.